Long before the Bermuda Triangle became one of the world's most famous mysteries, the waters of the Western Atlantic were already known for their unpredictable weather, powerful currents, and dangerous storms. Ships crossing this region had to navigate carefully through changing winds, rough seas, and vast stretches of open ocean. Centuries later, stories of missing ships and aircraft would transform this part of the Atlantic into one of history's most fascinating mysteries. The name Bermuda Triangle sounds ancient, but it is actually relatively modern. The region is generally described as a triangular area of the Atlantic Ocean between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. There are no officially recognized boundaries, and the exact size of the triangle changes depending on who is describing it. Unlike a country or a legally defined maritime zone, the Bermuda Triangle has no official borders marked on any map. Yet the legend surrounding it is enormous. For decades, books, newspapers, television programs, and documentaries have told stories of ships disappearing without explanation, aircraft vanishing from radar, compasses behaving strangely, and crews sending mysterious final messages before suddenly losing contact. Some stories describe entire vessels disappearing without leaving wreckage. Others speak of aircraft that vanished while flying through clear skies. And some accounts claim that survivors experienced strange phenomena involving time, navigation, or unusual lights. But how much of this is actually true? To understand the mystery, we have to travel back hundreds of years, long before the phrase Bermuda Triangle existed. One of the earliest stories associated with the region involves Christopher Columbus. In 1492, Columbus crossed the Atlantic during his first voyage to the Americas. While sailing through the Western Atlantic, his crew recorded strange observations. Columbus reported unusual compass behavior. According to accounts of the voyage, his compass appeared to behave differently than expected, creating concern among the sailors. At the time, navigators relied heavily on magnetic compasses, but they did not fully understand the difference between magnetic north and geographic north. Today, scientists know that Earth's magnetic field is complex and constantly changing. A compass does not always point directly toward the geographic North Pole. The difference between magnetic north and true north is known as magnetic declination, and it varies depending on location and time. Columbus did not have modern knowledge of Earth's magnetic field. To sailors living in the 15th century, unusual compass behavior could easily appear mysterious. Columbus also recorded strange lights and unusual observations in the sky and sea. One famous account describes a mysterious light appearing in the distance during his voyage. Some later writers connected these observations to the Bermuda Triangle legend. However, Columbus was not describing a supernatural region. He was simply recording unusual things encountered during a difficult ocean voyage. His journey demonstrates something important about the Bermuda Triangle story. The ocean has always contained mysteries that humans did not immediately understand. The Atlantic is enormous. Its weather can change rapidly. Its currents are powerful. And before modern navigation technology, sailors often had incomplete information about their exact location. A mistake of only a few degrees could put a ship far from its intended course. As European exploration expanded, ships crossed the Atlantic in increasing numbers. The region around Bermuda became particularly important. Bermuda itself is a group of islands located in the western North Atlantic. Its position made it strategically valuable for ships traveling between Europe, North America, and the Caribbean. But Bermuda's location also exposed it to severe weather. The Western Atlantic lies within an area affected by tropical storms and hurricanes. These storms can develop rapidly and produce enormous waves, powerful winds, heavy rain, and dangerous ocean conditions. The Western Atlantic is also influenced by the Gulf Stream, one of the most powerful ocean currents on Earth. The Gulf Stream carries warm water northward from the Gulf of Mexico through the Florida Strait and across the Atlantic. It can move at several kilometers per hour near the surface. For ships or aircraft that become disabled in this region, the current can rapidly carry debris away from the original location. This fact is particularly important when considering stories about ships that disappeared without leaving obvious traces. Imagine a vessel sinking during a severe storm. If its wreckage floats, powerful currents can move pieces of the ship many kilometers away. Search teams may arrive later and find nothing. To people without modern knowledge of ocean currents, such an event could appear almost impossible. But the sea does not preserve every accident. Sometimes wreckage sinks. Sometimes debris drifts away. Sometimes weather destroys evidence before rescuers arrive. The Bermuda Triangle became especially famous because of a series of mysterious incidents reported during the 20th century. One of the most famous occurred in 1918. The American cargo ship USS Cyclops disappeared while carrying a large load of manganese ore. The vessel was enormous for its time. It was more than 500 feet long and carried hundreds of people. In March 1918, the Cyclops departed from Barbados and headed toward Baltimore. It never arrived. No confirmed distress signal was received. No wreckage was found. The disappearance remains one of the greatest maritime mysteries in American history. More than 300 people were aboard. The ship simply vanished. Because the wreck was never conclusively located, many later writers included the Cyclops in lists of Bermuda Triangle mysteries. But there is an important complication. The Cyclops disappeared during a voyage that was not entirely inside the commonly described Bermuda Triangle. Its route took it through the Caribbean and Atlantic, and the exact location of its disappearance remains uncertain. Several ordinary explanations have been proposed. The ship was carrying an extremely heavy cargo. Its cargo may have shifted. The vessel had a history of mechanical concerns. The weather may have played a role. A severe storm could have overwhelmed the ship. Without a wreck, researchers cannot determine exactly what happened. The disappearance of the Cyclops became an important part of the mystery because it demonstrated how difficult it can be to explain an ocean disaster when there is little physical evidence. Then came another incident that would become even more famous. In 1945, a group of 5 American military aircraft disappeared during a training mission. They became known as Flight 19. On December 5, 1945, 5 TBM Avenger torpedo bombers took off from Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale in Florida. The mission was supposed to be a routine training exercise. There were 14 men aboard the 5 aircraft. The flight was led by experienced instructor Lieutenant Charles Taylor. The aircraft were designed for military operations and were capable of carrying substantial equipment. The training mission involved navigation over the Atlantic before returning to the base. But something went wrong. During the flight, Taylor reported that his compasses were not working properly. He appeared uncertain about his location. Radio communications between the aircraft and the base revealed increasing confusion. The pilots attempted to determine their position. As time passed, concern grew. The weather also deteriorated. Clouds and rough conditions made navigation more difficult. Eventually, communication with Flight 19 was lost. The 5 aircraft disappeared. Search aircraft were sent to find them. But the search produced another mystery. A PBM Mariner flying boat carrying 13 people was dispatched to assist in the search. It also disappeared. Within hours, 6 aircraft and 27 people had vanished. The incident became one of the most famous events associated with the Bermuda Triangle. Later accounts transformed Flight 19 into a supernatural mystery. Some stories claimed the pilots reported strange compass readings. Others suggested that Taylor said the aircraft were lost. Some versions of the story described mysterious green water or strange skies. Over the years, these details became increasingly dramatic, but the historical record is more complicated. The surviving radio transmissions suggest that Taylor genuinely believed his aircraft were lost, but investigators have proposed several possible explanations. One possibility was navigation error. If Taylor misidentified his position, the flight could have traveled in the wrong direction for a considerable distance. Another possibility involved the weather. Clouds, wind, and fading daylight could have made visual navigation extremely difficult. The aircraft were also approaching the end of their fuel supply. Once the fuel ran out, the Avengers would have been forced to ditch in the Atlantic. The ocean in that region is vast. Finding 5 relatively small aircraft in open water would have been extraordinarily difficult, especially with the search technology available in 1945. The disappearance of the PBM Mariner also has possible explanations. The aircraft had a reputation for being vulnerable to fuel vapor explosions, and one theory suggests that an explosion may have destroyed it. A nearby ship reportedly observed an explosion or fireball around the time the aircraft disappeared, although the exact connection remains uncertain. No definitive wreckage was recovered, and once again, the absence of physical evidence allowed speculation to grow. Newspapers reported the mystery. Later writers added details. Books expanded the stories. Eventually, the incidents became connected into a single legend. But the Bermuda Triangle as a named mystery did not become famous until decades later. In 1964, writer Vincent Gaddis used the term Bermuda Triangle in an article for the magazine Argosy. The phrase became increasingly popular. Then, in the 1970s, books about the Bermuda Triangle transformed it into a global phenomenon. Authors presented dozens of disappearances together, creating the impression that an unusually large number of ships and aircraft were vanishing from one particular region. Some proposed extraordinary explanations: magnetic anomalies, underwater civilizations, extraterrestrials, time portals, unknown forces. Even the lost civilization of Atlantis was sometimes connected to the legend. These ideas were fascinating, but fascination is not evidence. As researchers examined the incidents more carefully, they discovered that many famous Bermuda Triangle stories had been exaggerated, distorted, or taken out of context. Some vessels were not actually inside the commonly described triangle. Some disappeared during severe storms. Some had known mechanical problems. Some stories contained incorrect dates or locations, and in several cases, wreckage was eventually discovered. This does not mean every disappearance has been completely explained. The ocean remains enormous and difficult to explore. Some wrecks are still missing. Some accidents will probably never be understood with certainty. But the important question is whether the Bermuda Triangle has an unusually high disappearance rate compared with other heavily traveled ocean regions. Many researchers argue that it does not. The region experiences enormous amounts of maritime and air traffic. Thousands of ships and aircraft pass through the Western Atlantic every year. When a large number of people and vehicles travel through a region, accidents are inevitable. The real mystery may therefore be less about something supernatural and more about how humans interpret unexplained events. A ship disappears. We search for an explanation. If the wreck is never found, uncertainty remains. Then a story is told. Another disappearance occurs. The two stories become connected. Over time, dozens of separate events are transformed into a single legend. That is how the Bermuda Triangle became more than a geographical area. It became a symbol of the unknown. Yet the mystery was only beginning. As aviation technology improved, aircraft began crossing the region more frequently. Ships became faster. Radar became more advanced. Radio communication became widespread. Satellite navigation eventually transformed ocean travel. If the Bermuda Triangle truly possessed some mysterious force, modern technology should have revealed it. Instead, commercial ships and aircraft continue traveling through the region every day. And yet, the legend survives. Because somewhere beneath the stories of Flight 19, the USS Cyclops, mysterious compass readings, powerful storms, and vanished wreckage, lies a question that still fascinates millions. Is the Bermuda Triangle truly unusual, or have humans simply turned ordinary dangers of the ocean into one of the greatest mysteries in history? To answer that question, we must examine the strange disappearances, the science of the region, and the theories that have kept the Bermuda Triangle legend alive for generations. The mystery of the Bermuda Triangle became even more famous as stories of missing ships and aircraft spread around the world. But to understand what may be really happening in this part of the Atlantic, we have to look beyond the legends and examine the geography, weather, ocean currents, navigation, and the historical records behind the famous cases. One of the first things to understand is that the Bermuda Triangle has never had an officially agreed boundary. Unlike a country or protected maritime zone, it is not marked by buoys, signs, or official coordinates. Different authors have drawn the triangle in different ways. The most common version connects Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, covering a large area of the western North Atlantic. This matters because some incidents traditionally associated with the Bermuda Triangle actually occurred outside the region. When the legend became popular, authors sometimes included disappearances from a much wider area because they seemed mysterious. The result was a collection of incidents that appeared to form a pattern. But when researchers examine each case individually, the pattern becomes less obvious. One of the most powerful natural forces in the region is the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream begins in the Gulf of Mexico and flows through the Florida Strait before moving northward along the southeastern United States. It is a massive river of warm ocean water flowing through the Atlantic. Near Florida, the current can move at several kilometers per hour. For a disabled ship, that can be extremely important. Imagine a vessel loses power during a storm. Its crew sends a distress signal, but the ship begins drifting. By the time search aircraft arrive, the vessel may have moved a considerable distance. If the ship sinks, debris can spread even farther. Searchers who begin looking around the location where the vessel was last seen may therefore find nothing. This is one reason the lack of wreckage does not necessarily imply anything supernatural. The ocean is constantly moving. Wind moves objects across the surface. Currents transport debris underwater. Storms scatter wreckage, and deep water can hide enormous objects from search teams. The depth of the Atlantic also creates enormous challenges. Some parts of the Bermuda Triangle are thousands of meters deep. The ocean floor contains mountains, trenches, cliffs, and complicated geological formations. A ship can sink into darkness far below the surface. Without modern deep-sea technology, locating such a wreck could be almost impossible. Even today, searching for a relatively small aircraft or shipwreck across hundreds or thousands of square kilometers is extremely difficult. Weather creates another major danger. The western Atlantic is frequently affected by tropical storms and hurricanes. These systems can develop enormous power. Winds can exceed hurricane force. Waves can rise to dangerous heights. Visibility can suddenly fall. Lightning and heavy rain can overwhelm navigation systems. A ship caught in severe weather can be damaged or overturned within minutes. Aircraft face their own dangers. Thunderstorms can produce turbulence, lightning, strong vertical air currents, icing, and poor visibility. In the era before modern weather radar and satellite forecasting, pilots had far less information about approaching storms. Flight 19 disappeared in 1945, long before modern satellite navigation. The pilots had no GPS, they had limited weather information, they were operating over a vast ocean where visual landmarks were scarce. If their navigation calculations became incorrect, they could travel many miles away from their expected position without realizing it. This brings us to one of the most famous theories about the Bermuda Triangle: compass anomalies. Stories often claim that compasses behave strangely in the region. Some versions even suggest that compasses point in completely different directions. But there is a scientific explanation for unusual compass readings. A compass points toward magnetic north, not necessarily geographic north. The angle between magnetic north and true north is called magnetic declination. This angle changes depending on location and time. In some parts of the world, magnetic north and true north can become relatively close, but in other locations, the difference can be significant. A navigator who does not account for this difference can make serious directional errors. There are also local magnetic variations caused by geological features, but there is no established evidence that the Bermuda Triangle possesses a unique magnetic force capable of making navigation instruments behave impossibly. Another theory involves the possibility of methane gas beneath the ocean floor. Some researchers have suggested that large underwater methane deposits could theoretically release gas into the ocean. If enormous quantities of gas suddenly entered the water's density could decrease, potentially affecting a vessel's buoyancy. This idea has been used to explain sudden ship disappearances, but there is no convincing evidence that massive methane eruptions regularly occur in the Bermuda Triangle and cause ships to vanish. The theory is scientifically interesting, but it remains speculative. Then there are the more extraordinary explanations. Some people have proposed that Atlantis lies somewhere beneath the Atlantic. Others believe extraterrestrial beings may be responsible. Some suggest the Bermuda Triangle contains a portal to another dimension. There have even been theories involving time travel. These ideas are popular in books, movies, television programs, and internet videos, but there is no reliable scientific evidence supporting them. The most famous stories remain the strongest reason for the triangle's reputation. One case often mentioned is the disappearance of the USS Cyclops. In 1918, the massive American naval cargo ship disappeared with more than 300 people aboard. The ship was carrying heavy manganese ore. It was traveling from Barbados toward Baltimore. No confirmed wreckage was found. The mystery remains unresolved. However, historians have proposed several possible explanations. The vessel's enormous cargo may have shifted during rough seas. Structural failure is another possibility. A storm could have overwhelmed the ship. The Cyclops was also an older vessel, and its exact final location remains uncertain. Without the wreck, no theory can be proven. Another famous case involves Flight 19. The 5 aircraft disappeared in December 1945. Their disappearance became the foundation of many Bermuda Triangle stories. But researchers have suggested that the pilots may have become disoriented and eventually run out of fuel. The weather was deteriorating. The aircraft were operating over open ocean, and their instructor, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, had a history of navigational difficulties. If Taylor mistakenly believed the aircraft were somewhere they were not, the entire formation could have traveled farther from Florida than expected. The final location of Flight 19 remains uncertain. The search operation itself also became part of the mystery because one of the rescue aircraft disappeared. But modern researchers believe the rescue aircraft may have suffered a mechanical accident or explosion. In other words, several unusual events happened during a single day. Later storytellers connected them into one supernatural narrative. Another important case is the disappearance of the SS Marine Sulphur Queen in 1963. The ship was a converted tanker carrying molten sulfur. It disappeared in the Gulf of Mexico area while traveling toward Norfolk, Virginia. The ship was carrying 39 people. A search operation recovered some debris, but no complete wreck was found. Investigators concluded that the vessel likely suffered a catastrophic accident. Its design and cargo created serious safety concerns. Yet the disappearance was later incorporated into Bermuda Triangle stories. The same pattern appears repeatedly. An accident occurs, the wreck is difficult to locate, the event becomes mysterious. Years later, writers collect it with other disappearances. The stories become increasingly dramatic. Eventually, the original details can become almost impossible to separate from the legend. This process is sometimes called myth-making. It does not mean the people involved were lying. It means that stories change as they are retold. A newspaper may emphasize the mystery. A book may repeat the most dramatic version. A television documentary may add dramatic music and imagery. Another writer repeats the same claims. Eventually, an unverified detail can begin to sound like established fact. This happened repeatedly with the Bermuda Triangle. One of the biggest misconceptions is that ships and aircraft disappear in the region at an extraordinary rate. But the Western Atlantic is one of the busiest maritime and aviation areas in the world. Ships travel between North America, the Caribbean, South America, and Europe. Aircraft fly between major cities across the Atlantic. With enormous numbers of journeys, accidents will naturally occur. A better question is not simply, have ships disappeared here? Of course they have. The better question is, do ships disappear here at a rate that cannot be explained by normal accidents, weather, navigation errors, and traffic levels? There is no convincing evidence that they do. This is one reason many scientists and historians reject supernatural explanations. The U.S. government has also not identified the Bermuda Triangle as a uniquely dangerous geographical region. The U.S. Coast Guard has investigated numerous maritime accidents, but has not recognized a mysterious force operating in the area. Likewise, modern aviation continues to cross the region safely. Commercial aircraft fly over the Western Atlantic every day. Cruise ships travel through the area carrying thousands of passengers. Cargo ships move between ports. The overwhelming majority complete their journeys normally. Yet the legend continues because mystery is powerful. Humans are naturally drawn toward unexplained events. We remember the extraordinary more strongly than the ordinary. Thousands of successful journeys through the Bermuda Triangle are not memorable. A single disappearance is. That creates a psychological illusion. We see the unusual cases and forget the millions of uneventful ones. The Bermuda Triangle therefore represents something larger than a geographical mystery. It demonstrates how stories can transform ordinary dangers into extraordinary legends. Still, not every disappearance has been solved. Some wrecks remain undiscovered. Some final moments remain unknown. Some accidents may never have a definitive explanation, and that uncertainty leaves room for questions. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not whether the Bermuda Triangle possesses supernatural powers. Perhaps the real mystery is how little we still know about the ocean itself. Even today, large portions of the deep sea remain poorly explored. The ocean floor contains countless shipwrecks, geological formations, and ecosystems that humans have never directly observed. And somewhere beneath those dark waters may lie the final evidence needed to solve some of history's most famous disappearances. But there is still one major question. If science can explain many of the Bermuda Triangle's mysteries, why has the legend remained so powerful for generations? To understand that, we must examine the stories that turned a dangerous part of the Atlantic into one of the world's greatest legends, and finally separate what actually happened from what people later claimed happened.
The Bermuda Triangle remains one of the most famous mysteries in modern history, but the deeper we examine the evidence, the more complicated the story becomes. There is no single event that created the legend. Instead, the mystery grew slowly from a combination of real disappearances, dangerous weather, navigation errors, incomplete investigations, sensational journalism, and decades of storytelling. The ocean itself provided the perfect setting. It is enormous, unpredictable, and difficult to explore. A ship can disappear beneath the waves in minutes. An aircraft can vanish from sight within seconds. A storm can scatter wreckage across a huge area. And when investigators cannot recover enough evidence, questions remain. Those questions are where legends begin. The Bermuda Triangle became internationally famous largely because writers connected unrelated incidents and presented them as evidence of a mysterious pattern. The term itself became popular in the 1960s, and books published during the following decade dramatically increased public interest. Readers were introduced to stories of missing aircraft, abandoned ships, strange compass readings, mysterious radio messages. Some stories were accurate, others were exaggerated. Some contained details that later researchers could not verify, and some incidents occurred outside the boundaries of the commonly described triangle. Yet once these stories were connected, they created a powerful narrative. The Bermuda Triangle became a place where the normal rules seemed not to apply. Ships disappeared, planes vanished, navigation failed, time itself seemed uncertain. But when we remove the dramatic storytelling and examine the evidence, a different picture appears. The region is not an empty corner of the ocean. It is one of the most heavily traveled areas of the Atlantic. Major shipping routes pass through it. Cruise ships cross it. Cargo vessels travel between North America, South America, Europe, and the Caribbean. Commercial aircraft fly over it constantly. Millions of passengers have crossed the region safely. If a mysterious force regularly destroyed ships and aircraft, the modern transportation system would reveal the pattern immediately. Instead, modern vessels continue operating there. Navigation systems have become extraordinarily accurate. GPS provides precise positioning. Weather satellites track hurricanes and tropical storms. Modern radar detects dangerous weather. Aircraft have sophisticated communication systems. Ships use satellite communications, electronic charts, emergency beacons, and automated tracking. The Bermuda Triangle has not stopped being dangerous, but its dangers are largely the same dangers faced by ships and aircraft elsewhere. Storms, mechanical failure, human error, navigation mistakes, high waves, strong currents, and occasionally accidents whose evidence is never recovered. One of the strongest explanations for the triangle's reputation is therefore surprisingly simple. The ocean is dangerous, and humans are fascinated by unexplained disappearance. Consider the Gulf Stream. This powerful current can carry floating debris rapidly away from the location where a vessel was lost. A search team may know where a ship was last seen, but still have enormous difficulty finding the wreck. This is especially true when the vessel sinks into deep water. The Atlantic Ocean is not a shallow lake. Some areas associated with the Bermuda Triangle descend thousands of meters beneath the surface. At those depths, darkness is nearly complete, pressure is enormous, and locating a relatively small wreck across a huge area can be extremely difficult. Even with modern technology, underwater searches can take years. Some wrecks are found only by accident, others may remain hidden forever. Weather is another major factor. The western Atlantic experiences tropical storms and hurricanes. These systems can produce violent winds, enormous waves, heavy rain, lightning, and sudden changes in visibility. Before modern weather satellites and forecasting systems, sailors and pilots had much less warning. A storm that appears manageable from a distance can become dangerous very quickly. For an aircraft already struggling with navigation, bad weather can turn a routine flight into an emergency.
This is especially relevant to Flight 19. The 5 aircraft disappeared during a training mission in December 1945. Their disappearance remains tragic and mysterious, but there is no need to invoke supernatural forces to understand how such a disaster could happen. The pilots were operating over open ocean. Navigation conditions were difficult. Their leader appeared uncertain about their location. Fuel was limited, and once the aircraft went down, finding the wreckage would have been extremely difficult. The rescue aircraft that disappeared afterward adds another layer to the story, but it too may have been lost through a conventional accident. The same principle applies to the USS Cyclops. The ship disappeared with hundreds of people aboard. No confirmed wreck was recovered. That is genuinely mysterious, but mystery does not automatically mean the supernatural. The ship was carrying an extremely heavy cargo. Its disappearance occurred during wartime. Weather and mechanical failure were possible. The exact cause cannot be known because the wreck has never been conclusively located. That is an important distinction. Unsolved does not mean unexplained by science. It simply means that there is not enough evidence to determine exactly what happened. This distinction is often lost in popular discussions about the Bermuda Triangle. There are also theories involving methane explosions. The idea suggests that large releases of gas could reduce water density and potentially affect ships. Although methane exists beneath parts of the ocean, there is no compelling evidence that sudden methane eruptions explain the famous Bermuda Triangle disappearances. Another theory claims that unusual magnetic forces affect compasses. But Earth's magnetic field is already known to vary across different regions. Magnetic declination can create navigational problems if not properly accounted for. There is no verified evidence of a unique magnetic anomaly in the Bermuda Triangle capable of making ships or aircraft mysteriously disappear. Then there are the extraordinary theories: Atlantis, aliens, time portals, other dimensions, unknown energy fields, ancient civilizations. These theories have made the Bermuda Triangle even more entertaining, but they remain speculation. No credible scientific evidence has demonstrated that any of these phenomena exist in the region. The strongest evidence points toward a combination of natural forces and human mistakes. And that conclusion does not make the Bermuda Triangle boring. In fact, the real story may be even more fascinating. The ocean itself is still one of Earth's great frontiers. Despite satellites, submarines, sonar, and advanced robotics, humans have explored only a fraction of the deep sea in detail. There are places where sunlight never reaches. Mountains rise from the ocean floor. Deep trenches extend for kilometers. Shipwrecks rest in darkness. Entire ecosystems exist around underwater volcanic vents. The ocean is full of genuine mysteries. We do not need supernatural explanations to appreciate how extraordinary it is. The Bermuda Triangle, therefore, survives not because scientists have discovered evidence of a mysterious force, but because the region represents something psychologically powerful. It represents the unknown. Humans have always created stories around places where certainty disappears. Ancient sailors told stories about monsters beyond the horizon. Medieval maps contained imaginary creatures in unexplored waters. Modern society has its own mysteries. The Bermuda Triangle became one of them. Its legend also reminds us how easily information can change. A newspaper reports a disappearance. A writer retells the story. Another author adds an interpretation. A television program presents the most dramatic version. Eventually, the story becomes more famous than the original evidence. This does not mean every Bermuda Triangle story is false. Some people genuinely disappeared. Some vessels were genuinely lost. Some wrecks remain undiscovered. Those tragedies should not be forgotten simply because later generations turned them into legends. Behind every mysterious disappearance were real people, sailors, pilots, passengers, families waiting for them to return. For them, the Bermuda Triangle was never an adventure story. It was a tragedy. That human side is sometimes lost beneath the mythology. Perhaps the most responsible way to understand the Bermuda Triangle is therefore to respect both the mystery and the evidence. We can acknowledge that some cases remain unresolved. At the same time, we should not automatically assume that an unexplained event has a supernatural cause. Science begins with uncertainty. It asks questions. It examines evidence. It changes its conclusions when new information appears. And that is exactly how the Bermuda Triangle should be approached. After more than half a century of intense public interest, no reliable evidence has established that the region contains anything supernatural. No portal has been discovered, no alien technology has been recovered, no lost civilization has been proven beneath its waters, no mysterious force has been demonstrated to explain the disappearances. Instead, the Bermuda Triangle appears to be a heavily traveled region where ordinary dangers can become extraordinary tragedies. Strong storms, powerful currents, deep waters, navigation errors, mechanical problems, human decisions, and the simple fact that the ocean can hide its secrets extremely well. So, is the Bermuda Triangle real? The geographical region is real. The disappearances are real. The mystery surrounding some of them is real. But there is no convincing evidence that the Bermuda Triangle possesses supernatural powers. Perhaps that is the most interesting conclusion of all. The legend was built from real events, but transformed by imagination. The truth is not necessarily less fascinating than the myth. A ship vanishing into a storm, an aircraft losing its way over an endless ocean, a wreck resting thousands of meters beneath the waves, search teams spending days, months, or even years trying to discover what happened. These are powerful stories even without portals, aliens, or supernatural forces. And the sea still holds countless unanswered questions. Perhaps somewhere beneath the Atlantic, the wreckage of Flight 19 is waiting to be discovered. Perhaps the remains of the USS Cyclops will one day be located. Perhaps future technology will finally provide answers to cases that have remained mysterious for generations. Or perhaps some questions will remain unanswered forever. That is the nature of history. Not every story has a final explanation. Not every wreck can be found. Not every mystery can be solved. But the search itself continues. And perhaps that is why the Bermuda Triangle has remained famous for so long. It reminds us that despite all our technology, maps, satellites, aircraft, ships, and computers, there are still places where the world can feel vast, unpredictable, and unknown. The Bermuda Triangle may not be a supernatural gateway. It may not hide Atlantis. It may not bend time, but it has become something equally powerful, a symbol of humanity's fascination with the unknown. And as long as the oceans remain deep, dark, and unexplored, the legend of the Bermuda Triangle will continue to sail across the world, from generation to generation, from story to story, and from one unanswered question to the next.